our last regularly scheduled meeting for the calendar year. We will begin our public hearings in just a moment after we take care of one item of housekeeping business, namely the approval of the minutes from our last meeting earlier this month. Is there a motion on those minutes?
The minutes of the December 9th, 2019 meeting.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Our minutes of the December 9th meeting are approved. We will begin our public hearings for this evening. Just by way of introduction for anyone who is unfamiliar with our process, as each application is announced from the podium by Jeff, we will ask that the applicant or their representative come forward to the podium, provide your name and address for the record, and then a brief summary of the application. Excuse me. Following any questions from commission members, we will invite members of the public who wish to speak in favor of the application to come forward to do so. And then we will similarly invite members of the public who wish to speak in opposition to the application to come forward to do that. Where comments are made in opposition, we will encourage the applicant to return to address those comments made in opposition. So with that, Jeff, would you please introduce our first application this evening?
Good evening, Commission members. The first public hearing tonight, there are two companion public hearings. R-1975, a re-subdivision to combine two properties situated at 300 and 324 Spencer Street into one new lot. And SR-1908, a site plan review for demolition and new construction to construct a 106,000 square foot office building on 300 and 324 Spencer Street. 300 Spencer Street LLC is the owner and the applicant, and these properties lie within a lakefront T5 zoning district. The Planning Commission opened a public hearing on November 18th and continued the public hearing on December 9th, pending seeker determination by the Syracuse Industrial Development Agency.
Okay, thank you very much. So we will continue to hear both of these cases, right down the re-subdivision and the associated site plan review. And when time comes for action on each of these will occur separately. So with that, if the applicant is here, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Jeremy Calley, one of the attorneys for Bankers Healthcare Group, who owns 300 Spencer Street LLC. We also have with us Tom Douglas, who's our lead in construction at Bankers Healthcare Group, as well as King & King Architects and Kepler Freeman in terms of the site plan. Just like spending so much time with you. We're back for a third time, and I am confident by the end of tonight we can have all the questions answered, I believe. We did walk through some of the deviations we are requesting at our last meeting, and I think some of the questions that came had to do with the purpose behind a lot of the zoning in the area where we are, that it would be a walkable retail type space. And so we went back and spent some time to make sure we are obviously building a financial headquarters of our company. We just one of the visions that our owner has and why we want to be in the Inner Harbor is we employ currently about 270 people here in Syracuse. We anticipate in the next 5 years that'll grow to 500, and I think that's a conservative estimate. We've added almost 100 jobs, or over 100 jobs actually, up to date in the last year in the Syracuse area. We also have part of our company in New York City as well as in Florida. Florida rivals Syracuse in terms of the number of employees. Part of the vision of being in the Inner Harbor is that our owner, Al Crawford, really wants to retain and attract young talent and recognize that young people and the type of talent that work at BHG and that he'd like to continue to attract there like to live downtown, have places to shop, places to eat, want to live in that type of an area. And so his vision was to be in this spot in the Inner Harbor. Recognizing that a financial headquarters with the kind of parking we're talking about may not totally fit as some of the questions came last time in terms of that walkable space. Our intention is to make it look like that, to make it be that kind of a space. And you're going to see here berms and trees and plants and fencing. You're not going to see a parking lot. We obviously, if we're going to put all our employees at our financial headquarters, need them to have somewhere to park. But we want it to look as the city intends that area to look, and we'll accomplish that. To that end, some of our guys can speak to more detail, which I think was the majority of the questions that came last time. So I'm going to introduce now the lead in our construction project here, BHG, Tom Douglas. He's going to walk through some of that with you.
These points that he's going to cover represent some changes or additions from the last time we met, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Tom Douglas, 5280 Hogue Lane, Fayetteville, New York. Mr. Chairman, planning board members, thank you for coming out tonight. I know we're in the holiday season and very much appreciated. I also want to thank a couple people that have been really instrumental in overseeing this project, aside from the team that's assembled here tonight, and that is SIDA. SIDA was the lead agency, as you well know. They approved the project on the 17th, I believe. Also want to thank Center State, Rob Simpson. Rob was very instrumental in getting us in front of the right people to talk to and be able to discuss the project and the long-term vision for the project. And because I've been involved now, this is the second project with Mr. Crawford, who is the chairman of BHG. I think it's important that I bring up a little bit of history and tell you how far this company really has come, and also talk about the commitment that he has to Syracuse. I can remember going back about 12 years when Al was located on Chapel Street in Fayetteville. He had 3 employees, and he said to the employees at that time, he goes, you might want to look for another job because I can't guarantee you this company's going to work. And his vision since then has allowed BHG to go from 3 employees to over 250 employees. And the one thing Al said when we proposed this project to the county and the city, Ryan McMahon as well as Mayor Walsh, is he said, I want to be conservative. I don't want to ever overstate our growth. So when we say right now, currently we're employing 250 employees, we're growing at the rate of about 30 employees a month. He fully anticipates that by the time we occupy this building, hopefully in 2021, the fall of 2021, we'll be over 500 employees. In fact, the challenge that he presented to me early on, he said 2 things that happened when we did 201 Solar Street. Before we even moved in the building, we didn't have enough parking for the employees, and we outgrew the building. The building was basically obsolete. And I look back, which I thought was a fairly sizable project at the time, that was a $4 million project. Today, we're looking at a $40 million project 5 years later, which is just astounding. And I want to thank Mayor Walsh, because he was on the economic team, economic director for the city. He was very instrumental in allowing us to get a pilot program. Without that pilot program, BHG probably wouldn't be in Syracuse and wouldn't be nearly as successful as it is today. But when we met with Mayor Walsh, Al Crawford and myself, he pledged to Mayor Walsh at the time, he said, I'm committed to keeping this company in Syracuse. Al has been very instrumental and adamant about hiring locally. He hires from Syracuse, Lemoyne, Colgate, all the universities, even Brant Stratton. He feels like Syracuse offers him a unique situation that Florida does not provide. And that's intellectual capital. Al always jokes, what else do you do in the winter in Syracuse but go to work? In Florida, there's a lot of other things to do. But for that very reason, he's been very successful in retaining employees and also adding to the growth of Syracuse, BHG. The important thing that, and one of the things that was discussed early on, this is of course our 3rd meeting, was the project itself. It's an office building in the T5 district. The T5 district, as you know, presents a lot of challenges. It's really designed for retail. And I'm not here to discuss retail, but we all know probably when the city planners designed the T5 district, retail was in a different economic situation than it is today, in the fact that, Amazon probably wasn't in existence. So you look at the mall. The mall is hemorrhaging tenants. The Inner Harbor has no retail tenants. Core Iron City, they don't have any retail component at all to that project. So in order to really develop the Inner Harbor, you have to have people living and working in that area. And so for that reason, BHG will be the economic stimulus to the Inner Harbor and the future growth of the Inner Harbor. Because not only does Al employ 250, soon to be 500 employees, they're all young professional people. They like that urban vibe. They want to live downtown. They rent. They shop downtown. And that's where they want to live. In fact, we looked at taking the company out to DeWitt at one time. And there was a lot of pushback from the employees. And they said, Al, we don't want to live in DeWitt. To them, that was suburbia, that was the county. We want to be downtown. Downtown, Armory Square, Franklin Square, that's what's happening. That's where young people want to live today. So hence, fast forward, we're looking at developing a $40 million project. The economic stimulus in construction as well as sales tax, income tax is phenomenal. And I think that it's important that all those things are taken into consideration when you look at the project and the scope of the project. And since our last hearing, a couple points were brought up, and we have a team here that can speak better than I to some of the deviations and some of the concerns the planning board had. But one of the things we've done, and if you look at this rendering here, is, and I want to compliment King & King, Chad and Matt from King & King, as well as Scott from Kipling and Freeman, landscape architects. We've taken a concern that was a parking lot. And Al said, I have to be able to park these employees on site. In order to retain employees, I'm also concerned about employee safety. When they were on State Street, which they moved to when they went to 201, we literally had to have a police escort to escort the employees at 5 o'clock to their cars. It was across from the Snowden building, not the safest area of town. There's been problems at 201, but he said, I want to have my employees all be able to park on site. So what we've done is we've made this project a very walkable project. If you look at the elevations, when you're walking from the streetscape on Solar and Spencer, not only did we have wrought iron fencing with stone columns, but we've also added berms, a lot of abundant landscaping. So from eye level, you really don't see the parking lot. And I'll point out another project. I don't know if you're familiar with, but Wide Waters out in DeWitt, behind the Marshall Plaza. Far more parking spaces, much more office space than what we're proposing. But when you meander through that area, you don't see the cars because it's properly landscaped, there's berms. So really all you see in the background are office buildings. You really don't see the abundance of parking. And that's what we've done here. We've made this a very walkable area. I think we've greatly reduced the impact of a parking lot, which I know wasn't the vision for the city planners when they created the T5 district. And the other issue that came up in the hearing the other night, which is something that we just couldn't overcome, and that is subdividing the project into 2 parcels. And why do I say that? When we met with our financial partners, the banks that are interested in financing this project, to the tune of $40 million, it became really unfinanceable. When you have one parcel that only has parking and the other parcel that has the building, you get into all the complications of cross easements, both in utilities, drainage. It just complicates the project. It makes it too complicated for a bank to really get their arms around, because you're going to have multiple banks to finance. There's not one bank that's going to take a project and finance it to its entirety. So you're going to have a lead bank and probably a secondary bank backing up that commitment to the project, the first bank. So we felt like we have to have it as zoned as one parcel, if you will. And so I would like Chad, if you will, to speak to some of the deviations that the board brought up that I think we've addressed properly and hopefully to your satisfaction. And again, thank you very much for considering the project tonight.
Good evening, Chad Rogers, King Architects, 358 West Jefferson. Just real briefly, some of the changes from last time on the drawings that you received. First and probably easiest is the signage has been greatly reduced. We've taken the 2 large signs that were at the top of the building, top of the 5th floor. We've removed both of those. And we've also removed the ground-mounted sign that was near the front entrance drive off of Kirkpatrick Street. So what remains is one sign on the west elevation above the main entry at the traffic circle above the main entry on the overhang. And that is shorter than the maximum height allowed by the zoning. So we think we remove that as a deviation from our list. Second, and Tom touched on it, so I won't go into great detail, but is the screening of the parking lot and treatment of the street frontages, which I know are very important for the T5 district. On our board here, you see the Solar Street elevation. So Kirkpatrick Street is going in and out of the page right here at the front of the building, north side of the building. This is the Solar Street elevation. We're really trying to maintain urban street frontage, property edge, urban edge. So we have building, we have a screen wall that matches building base, which is the natural stone, and then it transitions for the rest of the entire perimeter of the site to a combination of fencing, matching stone piers, landscaping that defines that street edge, defines that walkable pedestrian experience. As we go around to the Spencer Street facade, street front, this is where the berm has been added. So you'll see that on the site plans in the topography, but also behind the street fence that goes around the entire property. We're actually bringing a berm up. You can see in scale here, where that is at about eye level. That berm behind the screen wall. This is the sidewalk berm, and it's hiding bumpers and cars beyond. That was a significant change from last time that I think really further screens that Spencer Street view and pedestrian experience. The last thing, and this was not a deviation, but it was a question last time that we just wanted to clarify. We've issued A105, which is the roof plan. There was a question last time about screening of mechanical equipment and height of mechanical equipment. So we've added notes on here for the dark black boxes are the mechanical equipment. Their heights are noted. Basically, you have 3 44-inch tall fans up here. The entire parapet wall is at least 42 inches tall. So anything 42 inches and less, you're not going to, it would be impossible to see. And from grade, you'd have to be far away if it was slightly above that. So we are screening those, even though they're just slightly above 42 inches, just to be safe. There is a kitchen exhaust, which 2 units here, which are both under 42 inches tall, so they will sit below the parapet, will not be visible. There are 2 taller units that are 100 inches tall. Those are air handlers, and we are screening those with 110-inch screen wall around them as well. Those screen walls that are shown will be the same color material as the cladding on the penthouse. And both of those screen walls will be significantly lower than the penthouse roof, which is shown on the new elevations as well.
Those units at the top of your diagram, those 3, they're roughly how far from the edge?
They're roughly 18 to 20 feet back. And in front of them is the skylight. Let's see if we see that. So they actually sit back behind this structure here. They're sitting back behind that, so they're not visible at all from any direction. Yep. So that's the summary of the changes made to the drawings. We are certainly happy to take any questions.
See if there are any. Thank you for the summary of those revisions. That's great, and the illustrations have helped depict that as well. Any questions concerning either the re-subdivision or the site review?
I just wanted to ask staff then, just to bring us up to date. So what you now have matches what we've discussed tonight?
I would like to confirm that the proposed signage is going to be limited to one wall sign of approximately 31 square feet, not to exceed 3 feet in height, and that there is no ground sign?
Yes.
Okay. Yes,
And that does away with the need for a sign waiver.
correct.
Okay. I think we discussed last time that they talked to the arborist, so we addressed species issues.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. Next slide, please.
There was a potential problem with the two principal buildings on one lot.
That is still a deviation.
Okay, what other deviations are we having here?
Based on the revised plans that we received, the rear door on Solar Street is still there. It's a deviation. They've provided justification for that. The site plan does illustrate two principal buildings as defined in the lakefront regulations. One of those principal buildings is a future building.
Right.
That's to address the first layer situation for the expanded parking lot, or for the surface parking lot. We addressed the tree species. The facade disposition and length still deviates from the lakefront regulations. There's been no changes in the facade. They have provided justification for the facade disposition and length. The exterior finish material continues to incorporate insulated composite metal panels. As far as I know, they've provided written justification for the metal panels. There are still architectural openings that are wider than they are tall, specifically on the northern and southern facades. They have in the past provided justification for the architectural openings. And then we've addressed the signage.
Right, and so what appears in our staff report is number 19 as a waiver is no longer needed. As
Correct.
a waiver, okay, great. Thanks for asking for that summary. Further questions of the applicant before we ask for public comment? Good, okay. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. Are there individuals who would like to speak in favor of this application? If so, please come forward, providing your name, your address, and your comments.
Good evening. My name's Pat Hogan. I live at 212 Bryan Avenue on Tipperary Hill. Will be the second district councilor. I served 4 terms here previously as representing this north and west side of the city. I have a unique perspective on this area. I served, as Steve probably knows, 34 years in the Syracuse Parks and Recreation Department, which is on Spencer Street. At that time, there was no T5 plan. I predate the T5 plan. My employment with the Parks Department, which was situated in a place that was called Oil City, which doesn't look like anything like it did when it was Oil City. I've been present at the resurgence of this Inner Harbor area. It's coincidentally, I just left a gathering where I talked to Mayor Tom Young, who had a vision for the Inner Harbor. And the vision has come to fruition. This is a big project for the Inner Harbor, obviously. You know, we have an opportunity to have a place where a lot of people can work and see, and maybe even think about moving into the city. You know, the city has lost populations, but this neighborhood has gained population because it is a nice neighborhood, and it continues to be. And it's because of the vision and the courage of many of these smaller contractors and smaller developers like Len Montreal and Cosmo Zavagli, and people have put a lot of time and effort and put their money into this area. So I would ask you to consider this. Consider the history of the area, where we've come from, and where we plan to go. You know, this is a leap of faith on the bank, on Bankers Healthcare. We're talking about $40 million. And I'd like to see the city once again have the moniker of having a place where people can trust on the city to do the right thing, can support businesses and can support neighborhoods like this, especially in a resurgent neighborhood like this. So I would ask you to have a little flexibility here and grant these applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor-elect. Other individuals who would like to speak in favor of this application, either one, please come forward, the re-subdivision or the project site plan review. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to either application? If so, please come forward. Okay, I don't see any additional speakers.
Before you close the hearing, I just would like to clarify my comments where I said they've provided justification. I would like to clarify that to be that they have offered justification for the deviations.
Okay. And Madam Legal Counsel, just to kind of take stock of where we are in this point in the process, the secret process has been completed. So previously we were unable to take action until that process had run its course. So that has now run its course. That is no longer prohibiting us from taking action on this. And the application is complete, and as my fellow commissioner was good enough to verify this evening, what the applicant has provided matches what we have on record. I think there was a discrepancy at our last meeting in terms of the two sets of plans, so those are now in sync. And everyone this evening who wished to speak for or against us had an opportunity to do that. I believe we're in a position now where we can close both of these hearings. Would you concur?
Yes. If you feel you're ready to proceed, then you are free to proceed and act tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. Then on that basis, we will close both of these two public hearings for these applications, and we'll move to our next public hearing this evening.
Next two public hearings are companion public hearings. R 1944 is a re-subdivision to combine 4 properties into one new lot at 308 Gifford Street, 515 and 517 Wyoming Street, and 620 Southwest Street rear. And SP 1912 is a companion special permit application for a restaurant to establish a restaurant within a convenience store at property situated at 308 Gifford Street, 515 and 517 Wyoming Street, and 620 Southwest Street rear. In both cases, Wyoming Gifford LLC is the owner and the applicant, and all properties lie within a business Class A zoning district. Just as a reminder, the commission did open public hearings on this application in August, early August, and then continuation in late August, and kept the public hearings open pending revision of the proposal in compliance with review comments.
Thank you. So as before, with these two companion cases in the previous set, we will hear both of these applications concurrently, and when the hearings are closed, action on each of these will take place separately. So with that, if the applicant...
Joe Mastriani, Mastriani Engineering. I'm the engineer for the project. As Jeff had stated, this project has been in here for a little while. A major, not major change, but a change to the project from the last time the board saw it is initially we were talking about putting 3 pieces of property together. This piece here, a 4th piece, has been added to it. The landlord or the owner of these 3 properties had to go through some legal things to get that switched over, so that took a little bit of time, so I apologize for the delay in getting it to you. So right now, we're looking at getting this piece added in. With that added in, we've made landscaping buffer along that property line because it's to residential. Neil Burke had some comments as far as some of the species changes. We talked to the arborist, Steve, and he had some changes, but Neil had a couple of things he wanted to modify with that, so those have been addressed and handed in to him. I believe Neil has looked at it and told Jeff that he was okay with what he saw. And we've also submitted the application for encroachment. As we stated, this line here is the highway right-of-way line, or the road line, we're gonna say. And our parking, which is existing, parking is in here. So I dealt with the gentleman downstairs who handles encroachments, and he asked that we give all the depths of encroachments to each one, and we've handed in the application a month to 6 weeks ago. And he said that they would proceed with it, and we've heard nothing at this time. So that's the part as far as the re-subdivision. As far as everything else in special permit, we did get, hang on a second. What I just gave you basically is from the Syracuse Fire Department in regard to the hood that would be required, and that they don't have any other concerns or comments regarding the project. That's basically an update as to what we had changed since the last presentation. Any questions?
Questions for the applicant? He's ready for questions, sure.
So we had some deviation and waivers, and since we had a break here since August, I just want to go back to see where we stand. I think I counted 7, but I just want to see if we could adjust or address those.
Yes, 7.
So the off-street parking, you indicated you applied for an encroachment.
Yes, in this area.
But at the time we first looked at this, your plan showed 24 parking spaces, 11 encroached. So as far as so we're looking at 11 that may be approved in the encroached
Yes.
space, and then 13 that were free of encroachment. That was 24. Okay. So if you were granted the encroachment, then that would satisfy that. Because you need 22 spaces total. Let me just look to council for a second. What would staff or council recommend at this point if there's another pending application? How do we proceed on the deviation for parking?
The commission has in the past and can, at your agreement, approve the application with the condition that the encroachment be based on approval of the common council of the encroachment.
Conditional waiver based on that.
It would be a conditional approval. You would choose to grant the waiver, approving the application with the condition that the encroachment be approved.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, there's a waiver requested for a Gifford Street driveway. Your plans still show, even with the addition on your property lines, you still need the driveway on Gifford Street?
Yes, as you can see, coming in here for deliveries or whatever, into the back here, it would be virtually impossible to wind around and go back there. That was discussed with Mr. Burke, and he was under the thing of, yeah, he can understand why that would be necessary back there.
All right, so we're still looking for that waiver. And that actually, it's 2 waivers. One is the location itself, and then the width. Then you're saying the width is because of commercial.
Well, the width is 24 feet. I mean, that's.
It was conflicting information about where it was measured.
Right.
If the, I'm sorry, if the, if the council approves the encroachment, then they can measure at 24 feet.
It satisfies.
Because they are on their, other than on their property line.
Okay.
They're on their encroachment line or whatever, yeah. So,
Just for clarification, the zoning ordinance defines the width of the driveway as measured at the property line.
right.
Because the property line is set as far back as it is, it's literally in the parking lot. If you measure the property line along Wyoming Street, that's where I got the width of the driveway. So yes, the applicant is proposing a 24-foot wide driveway within the city right-of-way that is a part of the encroachment application.
Okay, thanks to both of you for that. All right, the waiver of the open area curb requirement, does that connect to the encroachment as well?
It would be insofar as any curbing, any proposed curbing that would encroach into the city right-of-way. As it stands now, the only curbing that I've seen on the site plan is that which is right in front of the existing building. Aside from any curbing, street side curbing that's in the city right-of-way, there's no other proposed curbing on the site.
Site plan only illustrates curbing immediately in front of the building, and that hasn't changed.
Correct.
Okay. Then there was a waiver of sign requirement, and again, proposing to maintain an existing 100-square-foot awning sign. That's an existing condition?
Yes.
Oh, wait, there's more. Waiver of street line treatment. Has anything changed since our last review of this with the treatment, with the landscaping in front of the property?
Well, I mean, as with the original, right now, there's nothing around the property. So quite a bit has been put in. Like I said, we had discussed with the arborist as far as getting something that's gonna withstand being that close to the roadway, being that close to getting salt put in there, things like that.
Okay.
So, yeah, so we have some larger trees here, and then we have some smaller boxwoods in between, going actually on 3 sides of the building, and then continuing all the way up there. Then, with Neil, we ended up putting posts in here, decorative ornamental posts with chain, and then a ground treatment underneath them to stop people from backing out onto the sidewalk.
Okay, so, and what's in your drawing now that we're discussing on the record, it's been reviewed by the city engineer, and it's
Yes.
also been reviewed with staff, so it's the drawing that they have in their records now.
That's correct.
And on the Gifford Street side, there's now a grass strip that wasn't there previously, correct?
Front here?
Yeah.
That grass is there, yes. Right out behind the curb, there's grass there now.
There's now, oh.
That was just to point out that there is in this area here.
And then the last requirement would be a waiver of arterial setback, so in its existing condition of how far the building sets, right? The building is 4.3 feet back from the Southwest Street right of way. And that has not changed, right?
No,
That's
correct.
what the plan is.
Correct, yep.
That's what your drawings show.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All 7? Okay. Thank you. Do you have any questions? Okay. Great, thank you very much. We will now ask if there are members of the public who might wish to speak in favor of either of these 2 applications to please come forward to do so. Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to either application? If so, please come forward, provide your name, your address, and then your comments.
Larry Donahue. I live at 408 Otisco Street in the Near West Side. I'm here as a resident and a member of the Board of Directors of the Near West Side Initiative. I've been to the last couple of meetings and just wanted to state again, our neighborhood is dense with corner stores already. We are not looking for another corner store to move into the neighborhood. They frequently become centers of trash and magnets for bad activity. And, you know, we just don't think we need another corner store. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Are there other individuals who might wish to speak in opposition to either application? If so, please come forward. Okay, we apparently have no additional speakers. I think we're in a position to close these two hearings and move to our next hearing. Thank you.
The next public hearing is AS 1914A. It is a sign waiver appeal to install 4 wall signs on properties situated at 300 South State Street. Baruch Park Place LLC is the owner. Greg Fischel with Allied Sign Company is the applicant, and the property lies within a central business district office and service zoning district.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brody Smith. I'm an attorney at Bond, Shinnick & King. I represent the applicant. I want to introduce to you our team here. To my left is Mr. Fischel with Allied Sign. He can answer any questions about the more technical variety about the signage. Also, I have Jim Fryer seated to my left. He's the president of Haler Fryer Kuhn. That's the subject of the sign. Haler's moved downtown this year, bringing approximately 130 jobs into that building that used to be known as One Park Place. He's going to begin by just giving you a few minutes here with the background with the nature of that move. Then I'll talk to you a little bit about the legal standard, and then if there's any questions for Mr. Fischel, we'll conclude with that.
Thank you, Brody. Jim Fryer, CEO of Haler Fryer & Kuhn, 300 South State Street. That's where I work. And I'd just like to thank you for taking the opportunity to listen to me. Just to give you a quick background of Haler Fryer & Kuhn, we were founded in 1928, and we started in the city of Syracuse, and we're proud to be back in the city of Syracuse. We moved back this past October to approximately 40,000 square feet. We invested over $4 million in new furniture and improvements to the office space. We have 185 employee owners. So we're an ESOP company. We brought 130 people to downtown, and then we have other offices across New York State also. Just some of the parts of Haler. We also took all our employees are parking in the Fayette Street garage owned by the city of Syracuse. We're providing parking for all our employees next door to our building. And we are one of the top 100 insurance agencies in the country. And we're proud to say we're from Syracuse, New York. It's a very unique designation for an agency like ours to come from 1928 to where we are today with 185 employee owners. We have over 18,000 personal lines clients, people that we insure their homes, their auto, their life, and we have over 6,000 commercial clients. Not all these clients come to our building. We many times see our clients in their homes and places of business, but many times they do, and we provide parking behind our building with our landlord for all the clients that do come in on a daily basis. We're proud to be part of the downtown fabric, and Haler Fryer & Kuhn being 92 years old, we will invest in the city. We will give of our time, our treasures, and our talents, and we're looking forward to a great 15-year lease, and probably longer than that. We were 30 years at our other location, which was in Salina Meadows in North Syracuse, and we're just happy to be back in the city of Syracuse. Thank you.
With your permission, I'd like to approach and hand you some drawings. They'll help you better understand the issue. this is just an outline of my comments. You have our letter, which is longer, but this is just a summary of the points I'm going to hit. It's easier to follow than the letter. Here are my comments. So the zoning for this property is Central Business District, Office and Services. If you look south and east on the zoning map, there's also Central Business District, Office and Services restricted. I won't belabor a description of the neighborhood since we can see the building through the window. I know you're all familiar with downtown Syracuse. There are tall buildings. There are many signs. When preparing for this hearing, it was fascinating walking around downtown, taking note of all the different signs that sort of tell not just the present, but the past of the city, and it was a very enjoyable process, becoming acquainted with that. These signs, as a person who's a city resident for the last 16 years and has worked in the city for that time, are not just directional signs. These are signals to people who live here and people who visit here of the employers in this town, of the companies that have come downtown in recent years and have breathed life back into our downtown fabric. And this is one of those companies. This is 130 good jobs. The things that attract Bonchinick King, the things that attract Hiller Frank Kuhn downtown. It's a vibrant place. It's a place where people want to live. It's a place where people want to work. And these are the signs that are the evidence of it as you walk around our city and demonstrate that. Now, what we're seeking is a sign waiver. The way that the statute works is the amount of square footage that you're allowed for a sign is a function of the frontage, which tends to be a very small number. Also, the statute doesn't allow signs above the first floor, requiring all those elevated signs you see downtown to require a waiver. So we're asking for a recommendation from this board that the waiver that was granted from the zoning administrator's office be increased. That'll eventually go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, but we need your recommendation first. Let me get right into the photographs. The second page of my comment shows you the criteria, your analysis for the waiver. Really, I think A and D are not so relevant to our discussion, but if you look at B, C, and E of the waiver criteria, they're all sort of generalized about visual impacts, which makes sense from a sign statute point of view, about keeping in character with the neighborhood, about not having a damaging visual impact on neighboring properties. So getting into the photographs that I provided to you, the first one is of One Lincoln Center. You're familiar with this building. It says Bonchinick King on one side. It says Chase on the other side, signifying the bank on the first floor and the law firm above. To give you, the reason I show you this photograph is I want to give you some context. The word bond there is 72 inches tall. The next photograph is from the Barclay Damon Tower. The height of the letters on the Barclay Damon signs are 60 inches tall. The next picture is of the AXA sign. Well, that's a whole nother thing. That's much taller than anything that we've talked about, but it's a big sign. As is the Upstate sign, which you see is the fourth photograph. The next photograph, I want to give you a sense of the neighborhood. You see, it's a Google Maps image showing you Salina Street, the building, Fayette Street, and across the street, the heavily wooded Firefighters Memorial Park. There's been a comment from the Historic Preservation Board that the requested sign height of 55 inches that we requested, the actual waiver would only be 39 inches, and the statement from the Preservation Board was that larger height of letters would have a negative impact on the park. I'd like to address that now. You can see from this aerial photograph that the park is heavily wooded. I also went down and gave you a street view of it, and you can see what you see of the building from the park is not much. And I know this from personal experience, and I think maybe some of you do too, when being in the park, every year there's a great event where they have, for charity, people rappel down the front of One Park Place. And you may recall that they shut down the street. The reason they shut down the street, the police come and barricade it, is you can't see the building from the park. They have to shut down the street so that people can go into the street to view the building and the charity event. So I disagree that adding another 10 inches on any of these letter heights is going to, in any meaningful way, change any of the historic value of that park. It bears mentioning that park was renamed the Firefighters Memorial Park in 1972. This building was not constructed until 1983. So if the 100-foot tall building didn't alter the historic properties of that park, I don't know if our 10 more inches of our letters would make any difference. Getting into the nuts and bolts of the application, the first large sheet that you see here, this is our initial application. So that included letter heights of 55 inches. Remember, that's much smaller than Barclay's letters, much smaller than Bond and Chase's letters. And it would extend 68 feet across in length. Now, the waiver that was given, that application was for 4 signs. The waiver that was given was for only 2 signs. So signs on 2 sides of the building instead of 4. And that's the second sheet. We had the sign company mock up what it would be under the waiver that was provided by the zoning administrator's office. And that would result in letters that are only 39 inches tall, and they would be 48 feet wide. So you can see from the representation in that drawing that it is a preposterously small sign, sort of out of scale with the building. The building is 100 feet tall. The bottom of the sign, the bottom of the letters is about 94 feet tall. So from 94 feet down to street level, that's a very small sign, is the waiver that we got. Now, the reasoning for the waiver in defense of the zoning administrator's office is that was the waiver that was there before. But I think the reason that it doesn't work in this instance is there's more letters now. The name that was up there before was a shorter word, so the square, you could do more with less square footage. Now we've got Haler, Fryer, and Kuhn, is what the sign needs to say. So if you use the same square footage, you get these very small, squat letters. Now, the third sheet is another idea, and I think this board has the ability to recommend something in between, and that's what we've sought to do. Remember, the initial application was for letters that were 55 inches in height, and the waiver would result in letters that are 39 inches in height. What we're asking for is letters that would be 43 inches in height on the front of the building, and that's the photograph I'm showing you that faces the park, and then 48 inches in height on 2 other sides. So it's essentially a counteroffer in the sense that we would have 43-inch letters on the front facing the park, and then instead of asking for all 4 sides now, we'd only ask for 3, and the other 2 would be 48 inches. And the reason being for 48 instead of 43 is there's just a lot of brick on the other side. It looks out of proportion. The 43-inch letters look a little small in the space that you would slide it into on the brick there. So the net effect of that, our initial application was for a waiver of about, with square footage equaling 1,260 square feet. The waiver that we got was only 314 feet, so a quarter of what we asked for. In this sort of compromise we're proposing, the square footage would come out to about 850 square feet, so in between there. So to sum up, we're asking that the waiver that was granted be modified. We understand that the waiver that we asked for initially was large, but we also think that it's a fair point when you look at the elevation for what the letters would look like in the waiver that was granted, they're just too small. So we're asking for a little more. We're not asking for everything that we asked for at the beginning. We're looking to compromise, but we need the sign to be a little bigger for this to work. And for the reason, I won't reiterate what Mr. Fryer said, a lot of people come to this office. This is all outlined in our initial application letter. People need to be able to find it. It is difficult to see from street view because there's a wooded park in front of it. And also this is a significant downtown employer. This is 130 jobs, thousands of people coming downtown to visit the offices. It's a great thing for the city. It is not an eyesore. This is exactly the kind of development and the kind of tenants that we want on long-term leases. And I really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to give you our side of it and to answer any questions that you might have.
Which side will not have the sign? The south?
We have some flexibility. I mean, we need to have the sign on the east side because that's the front door. But to the extent that the zoning administrator, in the waiver that was granted, it didn't specify which two sides we would have. We have some flexibility in terms of what the other, if you gave us three sides, what the sides would be. We need the east side, but we have some flexibility there.
And I commend you for the presentation, commend you for the flexibility that you're giving us. We do appreciate that. But what happens, I'm the deliberative member of the panel, so I take a very long time talking to you, Mr. Smith. And that gives them a chance to think about their questions. It's like what I do when my wife's about to order something. There's a conversation that goes on. People figure it out. What happens is, when you do look at the cityscape downtown, you'll notice if a sign is large, it generally tends to be the one sign on part of a building. When you refer to Upstate or your law firm, you don't always see buildings that have more than two sides of signage. Fair, right? That's a fair thing.
Except for the one big recent exception, but Barclay Damon has all four.
And I'm saying that, but that is essentially a new trend. If
Right.
you look at signage, historically, even Upstate Medical tends to have one side of their building, the one that's facing the primary roads, has signage. So fellow commissioner was asking about if it was three sides, which one wouldn't have, and you're saying you're flexible. We appreciate that. The size of the letters that you're asking for now, you've talked that your company that would actually deliver the product, it's a feasible sign for them to do, three sides of the building.
Yes.
If the waiver was granted, we'd have to give you the flexibility to decide the three sides that you're looking for. Is that's okay with you? That if you decide-
Yeah, I think that, I mean, the obvious side, I think I can't speak for the zoning administrator's office, but, the frontage, as you said, it tends to be on the frontage. So we have frontage on the east side, which is State Street. And then on the north side is Fayette. That would make sense. And then on the south side of the building, we have frontage on Onondaga. That's not at a 90-degree angle. It's at a sort of a strange angle. But those would be, to me, the most obvious. But if there was a really strong preference that it be flipped, we could talk about that. Yeah.
The angle that goes to what we call Columbus Circle. Is what
Yeah. Well, on the way to Columbus Circle, yeah. Right across the street is the courthouse. Yeah. On that angled street. Yeah.
And you're aware, we've had comments from the Preservation Board that presentation you made about the park, the proximity of the firefighters and police memorial, you had that conversation with the Preservation Board about their concerns.
The zoning administrator provided me with those comments today, and I read them, and that's why I brought in those photographs showing the view of the building from the park, and did that research about the background of the park. And incidentally, Haler, Fryer and Kuhn, their initial start was providing insurance for firefighters and that sort of thing. And it's that's one of the attractions to this building, is to be near to that history, and they certainly contribute to a variety of firefighting organizations in terms of historical preservation, and they're very interested in preserving that park. They're not at all hostile to that in any sense of the word, and they want to do right by it.
And just taking you back to your days of appellate work, any mock trial work, can you compare the signs of the Park View Hotel and Crown Plaza, comparing them in scale to what you're looking for?
Yeah, I don't know the exact dimensions of the Park View and the Crown Plaza, but I did look at them when I was preparing for this, and they do appear to be bigger. The Crown Plaza is a taller building, and I think one of the reasons that we need a big sign is it is a tall building. It's a 100-foot tall building. So, you know, I think that's, you know, that's part of the justification. And then also, I realize that this board is trying to, you know, and the zoning administrator is trying to have things in proportion to the building. And I understand that the previous waiver that was granted before, and the reason I'm saying this in response to your question is I think, you know, the Crown Plaza sign is what it's going to be, because it's exactly the width of that circular building and it sits right on top of it. And you could say the same thing as the Park View. It fits into the architectural context. And our argument here is just giving us the same waiver that was granted 15 years ago for a completely different sign has resulted in a sign that is not in proportion with the building, which again, the zoning administrator couldn't have known that because they don't, you know, have the resources we have to size it after they gave us just the square footage. But having done it and put it on the drawing, I think it's pretty obvious it's not in proportion like it would be in those two buildings that you mentioned.
So our conversation about justifications that now you're looking at the scale of what you're trying to do. You're looking at the current scale of what's downtown signage and saying that this would still fit.
Yeah, and looking at the waiver criteria that are provided in your statute, you know, it has to do with wayfinding. You know, the nature of this business requires people to be able to find it. It has to do with visual impact, like we're talking about, it being in architectural proportion and not being an eyesore. I currently have an application in a neighboring town where the planning for a sign waiver, where the planning board instructed me that we permit buildings, not billboards masquerading as buildings. And so I think every board struggles with that when dealing with signage on a large building. But that's not this at all. I mean, you look at this building and you look at the sign that we propose, I think it is in good architectural proportion with what we're trying to do. And it is by no stretch of the imagination a billboard masquerading as a building. It is, you know, I think it is appropriate for the context of downtown now, as you're saying, and for the purpose which it serves.
It's 40,000 square feet in the building, is that right?
The entire top 2 floors, correct, yeah.
And the rest is, I mean, how many square feet?
There's I believe the building, correct me if I'm wrong, is 10 stories? Yes. Yes. So there are other tenants. It is a multi-tenant building. Part of the lease negotiation with Haler and the landlord gave them signage rights for, you know, exclusive signage rights for the top of the building. So there would be no other tenants that are going to come and apply later. So for the duration of this 15-year lease, this would be the only tenant seeking signage on top of the building.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I've seen those questions. Let's see if there are additional comments from the, if there are individuals who would like to speak in favor of this application, please come forward, providing your name and address and then your comments. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application, please come forward, provide your name, address, and your comments. So no additional speakers this evening on this application. We have the opportunity to either close the hearing if we have sufficient information, or in light of the fact that we have 2 members absent this evening, one of whom has significant experience with sign-related issues and historic preservation-related issues. Another option might be, I think, Madam Legal Counsel, to maintain the hearing open.
If you feel you need additional information, or like we discussed in our email chain, the absence of members could justify keeping it open if you feel you need more deliberation. And also if you felt you needed to look further into the comments that I believe you just received from the Preservation Board, and if the board wishes to, you can hold the meeting open, but if you feel you have enough information to proceed, you can do that as well.
Okay, thank you for the clarification of the options before us. Keeping it open, and okay. There's sense here among my colleagues that I also shared that it would be beneficial to have the design perspective of our missing colleague in this discussion, especially in looking at alternatives and options for the applicant, particularly in light of the action or the recommendation by the Preservation Board. So with that concurrence, we'll maintain this hearing open, and we'll move to our next hearing.
The next public hearing is R 1983, a re-subdivision to combine two properties situated at 232 and 238 West Colvin Street into one new lot. Greater Syracuse Property Development Corporation is the owner and the applicant, and the properties lie within a residential Class AA zoning district.
Thank you. Oh, the applicant's here. Thank you.
I'm here. I'm Terry Luckett with the Greater Syracuse Land Bank. 238 West Colvin Street is a vacant, single-family home that was acquired by the Land Bank in March of 2015. It's in extremely poor condition and requires a major renovation. 232 West Colvin is a vacant lot that was acquired in August of 2018. The lot measures 43 foot wide by 132 feet deep. Our strategy is to merge these two parcels to make the vacant single family a more attractive investment opportunity for a buyer that will purchase and rehabilitate 238 West Colvin Street. The zone is RAA, which allows two-family. The property is large with 2,200 square feet, so the property may be able to be converted to a two-family. Perhaps that would attract an investor who would be willing to invest in the property. The re-subdivision will provide additional green space and space for off-street parking for future occupants of the party. It will ensure that the property does not become orphaned in the future. The homeowner will pay taxes on the land and maintain the property, and the Land Bank feels this is in the best interest of the neighborhood and the city.
Questions for the applicant?
Thank you.
Are there individuals who would like to speak in favor of this application? So please come forward. Anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the application, please come forward. Okay, then we will declare the hearing closed. Our next hearing, please.
The next public hearing is 3S 91-06M1, a 3-mile limit subdivision review of the Brittenfield Third Amendment subdivision in the town of DeWitt to combine two properties situated at 5008 Brittenfield Parkway into one new lot. Hematology Oncology Associates of NYPC is the owner and the applicant.
If the applicant is here, please come forward. If there is anyone who would like to speak in favor of this application, please come to the podium. And if there's anyone who would like to speak in opposition to the application, please come forward. So we have no applicants in these 3-mile limit applications. That's not unusual. Is the application complete to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, it is.
And on that basis, then, we will close the hearing and act on the information in our file and move to our next hearing.
Next public hearing is a 3-mile limit subdivision review of the Cornerstone Crossing subdivision in the town of DeWitt, 3S 1918, to combine 5 properties situated on Jamesville Road and Woodchuck Hill Road into 2 new lots. Michael R. Goodfellow is the owner and the applicant.
You were smart not to leave the podium. If the applicant is there, please come forward, or a representative of the applicant. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this application? If so, please come to the podium. And is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to the application? Please come forward. No speakers. Again, I will ask the same question. Is the application complete?
Yes, it is.
Close the hearing and act on the information in our packet. Our next hearing, please.
Is another 3-mile limit subdivision review in the town of DeWitt, 3S 1919, a lot line adjustment to realign 2 properties situated at 116 Maple Drive and 102 Hobson Avenue into 2 new lots. Bakara Karam is the owner and the applicant.
So if the applicant or their representative is here, please come to the podium. Seem to have an applicant, so if anyone would like to speak in favor of this application, please come forward. And if anyone would like to speak in opposition to the application, please come forward. So no speakers for this application. Once more, is the application that we have on file complete?
Yes, it is.
Close the hearing, act on the information that we have in hand, and that will conclude our public hearing schedule for this evening. We still have business to attend to, but first we will circle back to the hearings that we closed this evening and take action if there is properly moved and seconded motion that gathers the support of all 3 members here this evening. So circling back to the beginning of our schedule for tonight, we had 2 companion cases. First, a re-subdivision, R-19-75, the project on in the lakefront property on Spencer Street, and the site plan review. So we heard these cases concurrently with updates by the applicant. We will now act on these 2 applications separately, the first being the re-subdivision, R-19-75.
I have a question for staff.
Please, go right ahead.
On this second building on the single lot, then the second building being in the future, is that what we approve now, that there will be or there can be that building there in the future? Or is that something that they have to reapply for?
I'll start with they will have to submit a new application for that future building with respect to the design standards, to modify the site plan, if you will, to include the design standards.
But the issue of 2 primary buildings on...
Well, you can waive that requirement. In your question, you alluded to whether it was a proposed building or required, or words to that effect. And I apologize, I would have to go back and listen to the recording again. But any approval of the site plan would require a building in the future, and if the applicant is not going to construct the building, then they would have to come back to modify the site plan for the project to not include the building, because that would affect parking in the first layer.
You answered my question. Thanks.
Additional questions concerning the details of the application? Motion? The waivers are for the next one. This has no waivers.
If it helps, you can include in your motion either addressing which waivers you are approving or which waivers you are not approving. And I will start by saying the sign waiver deviation is being taken out because they're taking out the ground sign. So there is no request for a sign waiver.
That's helpful when we get to the next one, since we're on the re-subdivision now. But that's helpful when we get to the next one, which should be momentarily. So with the re-subdivision, it's not a question of waiver, so it's a straightforward motion without invoking any waivers.
Right, it's just a question of the condition.
Correct.
All right, so I'll make a motion, and you can feel free to break any friendly amendment you like. Move approval with a negative declaration with the condition that the further development of the second building will come back to the commission for review.
Works for me.
Does that work for Seth?
Yes, although I don't think it's necessary for the subdivision.
Okay.
It's okay. Second.
And by way of discussion, I would just want to bring into the conversation the point that the applicants shared with us this evening and probably previous meetings about the financing difficulty, hence the need for one lot as partial justification for this particular re-subdivision. Additional discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The re-subdivision is approved. That takes us now to the companion piece, which is the more involved site plan review for the project, SR-19-08. This application, as Jeff had noted, does have a series of waivers requested, and I think he was offering, for simplicity's sake, whichever is easier for the maker of a motion to say which requested waivers might not be part of the motion, if that's a fewer number or zero, or if someone wants to enumerate all of the waivers that are part of the motion, that's fine too, whichever is a simpler way to proceed. But we're now at SR-19-08.
And because the commission enjoys this kind of thing, I'm going to go through them until staff says we need to correct something. So based on the record developed over our several dates of hearing, I'll move approval with a negative declaration granting the following waivers. The waiver for the rear door, although they've agreed to make some architectural changes, some design changes, we still require that waiver for the rear door. The principal building question still remains, so we're granting a waiver. I believe they addressed parking lot screening and parking lot opening. Those were not needed. And I believe they addressed tree species, and again, arborist and landscaping issues were addressed. We will need exterior finish material waiver and architectural opening regulations waiver. I think the other waivers were addressed. And I believe they addressed the issue of outdoor trash storage screening. So I think the others, the appropriate justifications were granted for the waivers we're now including in our motion.
Second.
So for discussion, just for clarification, did you include in your motion the facade disposition waiver?
No, I did not. So I'll include facade length, facade disposition, because those waivers are needed.
I would ask for clarification on the exterior finished material.
I believe based on our discussion tonight, we were down to just a few issues. I think one was the insulated material that's still being used, insulated exterior material.
Steel. Yes.
You can ask the applicant during your deliberation if you do have questions for them.
I think it's just the steel. That was the problem. And that's what
That's the facade material we're waiving, the steel.
It's the insulated composite metal panels.
yes.
So, I was calling it insulated, she's calling it steel. Potato, potato, we agree, it needs a waiver.
Further discussion?
Yes, he's including that one.
I would like to note expression of gratitude on behalf of the commission for some of the changes that the project team put together and the willingness to listen to some concerns that were raised over the last couple of meetings and working diligently to incorporate those into the project. We want a successful project. We also want to continue to live, or we need to continue to live with the regulations that we have for that district until someone gives us a new set of regulations to work with. So those are our tools that we have to work with. And we appreciate the flexibility of the team to recognize our concerns are rooted in those regulations that we don't create and we don't change, but we're trying to apply them fairly across not just this district, but other regulations across the entire city. So it makes it easier to come to a motion like this, a resolution like this, when there's flexibility on the part of the applicant. So we're deeply appreciative, and we look forward to a very successful project. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The project site plan is approved. And we now move to our next case, which is a re-subdivision case, R-19-44. The first part of two companion cases, but this is only for the re-subdivision for the project on Gifford Street, Gifford, Wyoming, and Southwest Street. Is there a motion on this?
I move approval for the negative declaration.
Second?
Discussion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? This re-subdivision is approved. And we now move to its companion case, the SP-19-12, which is the project site review, which by definition is more complex. And this one involves several requested waivers, I believe 7 in all. Is there a motion on this application?
Question. I was going to ask the chair, but I'll ask staff. How many times have we reviewed this application? How many public hearings have we had?
This has been the third public hearing. The first one was on, you opened the public hearing on August 5th and continued it on August 26th, electing to continue the public hearing yet again pending submittal of revised plans in response to review comments. The applicant did work with city staff, specifically the transportation planner, during the months of September, October, and November, resulting in the plans you received this evening. And they have been reviewed by the transportation planner, who essentially said they're good to go.
And there's an application pending on the parking spaces, the encroachment issue.
That is correct. I regret I do not have a status of the encroachment application.
And we can make it conditional, but the encroachment issue, the right-of-way issue affects parking, and it also affects the width of the driveway.
Correct.
And I'm gonna ask the other question, so if the encroachment's not granted, does this whole application come back to us? Or what happens then?
I would, essentially, it would negate your approval if the approval is conditioned on something that doesn't happen.
Okay.
They would have to come back if they,
Start over.
with a substantially different idea.
Okay. Thank you.
You feel that having the encroachment is even critical for you making a decision, like having the decision made by the council in front of you and in giving an analysis of what is before you, you can certainly hold and wait to act.
I'm getting the sense from the commission that if that is a condition that either it happens or it doesn't, if it's not granted, then our motion on our action would be void at that point. They'd have to come back with a new site plan. They'd have to come back and start over.
Yes.
Okay.
I would offer for clarification, they could come back with the same site plan, but request full waivers of all the deviations.
Oh, yeah, that is.
Understood, but they'd have to come back with a new application. If
Yes.
this-
It would be, because essentially your approval didn't happen, and it would, this clock would start again, essentially.
Okay. And I believe this application also had a number of I counted 7 waivers. Go back to. All right, so to move approval conditionally, move approval of the negative declaration, first conditioned on the granting of the encroachment application. Without that condition being granted, undoes our action here today. Granting a waiver of off-street parking, again, which is conditioned on that encroachment. Granting a waiver of the Gifford Street driveway location requirement. Granting a waiver of the Gifford Street driveway width requirement, which again is affected by the encroachment. Granting a waiver of open area curb requirement. They still need a sign waiver?
Yeah.
Yes.
Granting waiver of the sign requirement.
I would offer that the sign waiver would not necessarily be impacted by the encroachment.
But it's an existing.
Existing conditions.
And again, the setback is an existing condition, granting a waiver of the arterial setback requirement, and then, based on the justification provided that they'd had talked to the arborist, granting a waiver of the street line treatment area. The,
24
right,
with 11 in the right of way.
right, so again, conditioned on the granting of the encroachment, the requirement for this location wouldn't be satisfied unless they received the 11 parking spots that are subject to that encroachment waiver, because they have to have a total of 22, and they're offering 24 if the encroachment waiver is granted. Is that correct?
Yes.
Second.
I would just offer for clarification with respect to the street line treatment area requirement, item number 23. The city arborist was not involved with that requirement.
That was the transportation plan, I think.
Transportation plan, I'm sorry.
Correct.
Misspoke.
Said arborist. Any additional clarifications concerning this detailed motion? Conversation. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The special permit is approved. Continuing on our hearings from this evening, AS-19-14A, we held open, hoping to tap the expertise of an absent commission member at the next meeting. That brings us to the re-subdivision on West Colvin Street, R-19-83. Is there a motion on this?
Move to approve with a negative declaration.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Next is the first of three-mile limit cases this evening, all of which are in the town of DeWitt. This one being 3S-91-06M1. The applicant wasn't here. We had no speakers for or against, but the application as recorded on file in the zoning office is complete. Any additional comments from staff or?
No.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion on this 3-mile limit case?
I'll move approval with a negative declaration.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? That 3-mile limit is approved. Our second 3-mile limit case, 3S-19-18, also in the town of DeWitt. This one at Woodchuck Hill and Jamesville Road, again, is before the previous case. No applicant, no speakers for or against, but the application on file is complete. Is there a motion on this?
I move approval with a negative declaration.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? That also is approved. Our final 3-mile limit case in DeWitt this evening, 3S-19-19. This is the case at Maple Drive and Hobson Avenue. No applicant presentation, nobody speaking for or against, but a complete application is on file in the office. Is there a motion on this?
I move approval with a negative declaration.
Second?
Discussion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? That final 3-mile case is approved. That completes action on all of the closed hearings from earlier this evening, but we still have additional business. Moving on now to those under the classification of minor modification. Jeff, can you give us a quick overview of this item?
Certainly. SP 1815M1 is a special permit modification for indoor amusement and recreation in order to modify the floor plan on property situated at 225 to 303 Wilkinson Street. It consists of relocating an office tenant essentially from Suite 106 to Suite 104. This would increase the amount of tenant-related office floor space by approximately 4,000 square feet. The Planning Commission approved the special permit originally in June of 2018, granting a parking waiver for 85 spaces. The proposal reduces the number of required off-street parking spaces from 274 to 270. As laid out in the table in your staff report, and the proposal does not necessitate any new or expanded waivers from the zoning ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on this one? And if not, is there a motion for action?
I move approval with a negative declaration.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? That special permit modification is approved. We move to yet another category of business, modification consideration, this pertaining to signage on West Washington Street in downtown. Jeff, again, would you give us a quick summary of this?
This is
Item.
SP 0813M9, a special permit modification to a parking lot in order to install 4 wall signs on property situated at 200 South Franklin Street. The Planning Commission reviewed this application on December 9th. The applicant is proposing to install 4 30-square-foot tenant wall signs on the 5th and 6th floors of an existing 6-story office building. The proposal includes maintaining 2 51.3-square-foot wall signs on the first floor. The commission approved the special permit originally in September of 2008 to construct a 6-story building with a parking lot to be used for to include public parking. That's what required the special permit. The application or the approval at that time did not include any signage. Over the years, the commission has approved multiple modifications to the original special permit to allow for tenant signage. This particular proposal necessitates 2 waivers from the zoning ordinance, in that signs identifying individual uses shall not be located above the first floor, and signs identifying other uses which do not have street frontage may not be situated on the exterior of the building. So these 2 tenants, by virtue of being on the 5th and 6th floors, and the proposed location of the signs, 2 signs each on the 5th and 6th floors, with signs facing Washington Street and Franklin Street, deviate from those zoning requirements. The proposal would also increase the building signage to 8 signs, totaling approximately 293 square feet, with 4 signs facing South Franklin Street and 4 signs facing West Washington Street, each on the 1st, 2nd, 5th, and 6th floors. During your initial deliberation on December 9th, you did request additional information from corporate counsel regarding the applicability of the special permit review process. I will let corporate counsel provide the information that you requested and answer any questions, and I've got her response to hand out to you.
Based on your question last month, the basic conclusion is that any sign modification should be considered as part of that, a modification of that original special permit, so long as the use remains the same as the criteria indicate in that memorandum. I did want to add that I don't think that a simple change in the content of a sign would necessitate review, especially considering the recent changes and rulings regarding content neutrality. Supreme Court in 2015 had a decision that basically closed down a lot of local authority to review content other than obscenity and things of that nature. So if the sign was simply just having a name change, but the size, dimension, and the lighting and the things that you review were not changing, I don't think you would need to review it. But otherwise, and I'm sure the applicant knows that sometimes people are picky and they want little changes, so changes in sign and lighting would necessitate review.
Okay, thank you. And the applicant is here. Since you stayed here all this time, would you like to